legendary soul singer, feminist, civil rights icon Aretha Franklin died a week ago, Thursday morning. Often called the Queen of Soul or the voice of Black America, she was 76 years old. Aretha Franklin, rest in power. She was a force behind the scenes during the civil rights movement. She would donate concert proceeds, post bail for activists, host fundraisers, and use her platform to promote voting rights. She empowered generations of women with her music. Jesse Jackson, a veteran of the civil rights movement who will eulogize Aretha Franklin at her upcoming memorial, said that Aretha Franklin was a source of joy, who used the platform for issues other than just singing. In the midst of this movement that was responded to often, if not always, with violence, Aretha Franklin's voice remained one of a source of joy in the movement. And we lift her in our thoughts today. When I think of joy, I often think of a moment that I often had as a child. As we blessed the backpacks this morning, I was reminded that each morning when I went off to school, after getting my backpack and my lunch box kit, the thermos thing, sometimes it was tin, a little longer it was plastic, had a thermos in the top. I would carry that out the door, but I would stand at the bottom of the steps, and my mom would be there at the top of the steps. And she would always say to me, every day she would say, "Neal, don't forget to smile." And I would. And I wonder, after engaging in that laughing meditation with Trudy this morning, if it isn't true that smiling just the act of smiling can let endorphins into our bodies, just that act, even if we're not feeling like smiling. So I'm blessed always with that admonition from my mom to don't forget to smile. I don't know about you, but lately I've been experiencing a roller coaster of emotions with the daily onslaught of news around what is happening in our nation and our world. I seem to have these moments of panic and concern each day as the news rolls in. Reminds me of a story by a Buddhist writer, Pema Chodron. Maybe some of you are familiar with her work. She tells this story in her book, The Wisdom of No Escape, How to Love Yourself and Your World. She tells the story of a woman who's running away from tigers. And she runs and runs, and the tigers are getting closer and closer, nipping at her heels. When she comes to the edge of the cliff, she sees some vines there, so she climbs down and holds onto the vines. But looking down, she sees that there are tigers below her as well. She then notices that a mouse is gnawing away at the vine to which she is clinging. She also sees a beautiful little bunch of strawberries close to her, growing out of a clump of grass. She looks up and she looks down, she looks at the mouse, and she just takes a strawberry, puts it in her mouth, and enjoys it thoroughly. Tigers above, tigers below. This is actually the predicament that we are always in terms of our life. Each moment is just what it is. It might be the only moment of our life. It might be the only strawberry we'll ever eat. We could get depressed about it, Or we could finally appreciate and delight in the preciousness of every single moment of our life. In the anxiety of these days, for me, I need to remind myself to take time to savor the strawberries. And I know that I can find some you-pick strawberries somewhere around here that are organic and union grown, so I think I'll be all right. You know, I think that sometimes the seriousness of our times may suggest that we also must always be serious. I can witness this in many engagements with social justice movements. Some have described this in the movements as this rigid radicalism and asked how the communities that are supposed to be explicitly anti-oppressive and anti-authoritarian, like many religious communities strive to be, that ours, and ours not being an exception, that these places that should feel most alive and powerful, we can sometimes make them feel cold, stifling, and rigid. Maybe it's because of a misguided sense that we have to be serious during serious times. Maybe some of us carry some DNA of religious communities of the past that did not approve of collective joy. It's kind of what I'm reminded of in what E.B. White told us this morning, that, you know, arising in the morning torn between a desire to improve or save the world and a desire to enjoy or savor the world, it makes it hard to plan the day. I suppose like many quotes expressing some kind of dualistic thinking, this one is no exception in that one can and must find ways probably to both save and savor the world, even in the same day, or the same hour, or the same minute, or the same moment. Part of savoring and saving is the practice of joy. Barbara Kingsolver says that in my own worst seasons, I've come back from the colorless world of despair by forcing myself to look hard for a long time at a single glorious thing, a flame of a red geranium outside my bedroom window, and then another, my daughter in a yellow dress, and another, the perfect outline of a full dark sphere behind the crescent moon, until I learned to be in love with my life again. Like a stroke victim retraining new parts of the brain to grasp lost skills, I have taught myself joy over and over again. Our Unitarian and Universalist forebears argued that heaven is not something to discover in death, but is right here on earth. They remind us that it is our responsibility to see it, to savor it, and to take pleasure in it. The work of joy, rather than being indulgent or seductive or a distraction from saving the world, is a key to what makes us human. Joy has the power to transform us. With one long, holy stare at a single glorious thing, we can be reconnected. Balance can be restored. We can see the world not simply as brutish, broken, and dangerous, anxiety-filled, but we can also see it as gentle, surprising, and woven through with a love that will not let us go. The simple act of sacred staring is not about being a distraction from pain and sorrow. It's about achieving a wider view. It's about stepping back and seeing all life as the precious gift that it is. When we experience joy, we don't just feel delight in some tiny piece of this world. We are welcomed back into the wholeness of the world and feel connected once again. Now, I'm just going to ask your permission to go old school for a minute, like really old school, and mention the 15th century Dutch Jewish philosopher Baruch Spinoza. I know this is old school. Yeah. So Spinoza conceptualized the world in which everything was interconnected and in process. A world that is interconnected. I wonder where I've heard that before. His ideas were rejected and despised by his contemporaries, but have endured to influence numerous and current movements of progressive theory and practice. The power of joy, as Spinoza imagined, is the processes by which people can become more alive, more capable, and more powerful together. For Spinoza, that entire purpose of life was to become capable of doing new things with others. He called this the process of joy. For him, joy was not the same thing as happiness. The joyful process of transformation is one that contains an entire range of feelings all at once, not just happiness. Spinoza's concept of joy is not an emotion at all, but an increase in one's capacity and power to affect and be affected. Joy is the capacity to do and feel more. Joy is our capacity to be creative and embrace uncertainty. Unfortunately, joy can rarely then feel comfortable or easy. That is because joy transforms and reorientates people and our relationships. The power and practices nurtures enabling ways for us to be together. Many suggest that the opposite of joy is sadness, when it really is isolation, disconnection, and loneliness. Joy is not about making us feel happiness. It's about restoring our relationship with the universe and with the divine, whatever that is for us. It is about creating spaces of vulnerability so that joyful encounters can happen as we find ways to both savor and save the world. To practice the power of joy is to forge common practices with others that can sustain, enable, and deepen transformation in the here and the now, beginning from wherever we find ourselves. What better place to practice joy than in religious communities like this one, where we are called by our common mission to enable and deepen transformation. Process theologian John Cobb writes of God as the all of everything. The all of everything. The power that joy has is to place us within the whole and not outside of it. One could say that the experience of joy is the experience of God. In other words, experience of the all of everything. So are you ready for that? Are we ready for that? Are you ready to be welcomed back in? Are we ready to be welcomed back in? If so, look around. There are dozens of glorious things inviting you to return. The last time I was in the pulpit, we did an exercise where I asked you to write some requests using the sentence stem, "Can you?" as a request to another. And in that, I heard strains of loneliness even in our community. And so I invite us to cultivate this practice of joy as an antidote to loneliness. But it's something that we must do together. So, as we move into the fall of this new church year, take a look at the ways in which you can engage in community and in the practice of joy, whether it be in community circles, coming to worship, coffee hour, restorative practices, movie nights, justice work, Wednesday community dinners, whatever it is. Now, you don't have to do all of these things, right? I mean, that could be overwhelming. But you could do one or two as a way to engage in the practice of joy. So I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I hope you want to be ready when joy comes back to you. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.